So we're here with Colonel John Eidsmoe. He is a man of many, many talents. He's a senior counsel at the Foundation for Moral Law, also a retired colonel. And thank you very much for being with us, Colonel.
And thank you. So good to be with you, Alex.
So you were just talking here at the Eagle Council about social justice and how there's kind of been a hijacking of our language. Tell us a little bit about that and why it's important.
He who controls language controls politics, according to George Orwell. And by confounding our language, it seems like you're using attractive terms to describe concepts that aren't so attractive, and most people, it seems, don't really think beyond the term to see the meaning. Social justice being one example. Who can be against social justice? Until you come to realize that that's not like biblical justice, which respects property rights, contract rights, and the like. Social justice is the idea that we need to have government step in and redistribute privilege, redistribute income, wealth, and all kinds of assets to force egalitarianism on everyone. And there's a saying that it is as much an injustice to make unequals equal as to make equals unequal. And we need to consider, as to how much a person should have, consider how hard they worked, how well they prepared, what they've sacrificed, delayed gratification, what contributions they make. And those are all factors to consider, and the marketplace is the best way to consider those things.
Very good. And so I know you've been involved in a lot of the battles that have been going on in Alabama that are really national fights. One of the things that I'm curious about, and I think a lot of our viewers would be also, is the fight over the Ten Commandments in Alabama. Would you tell us a little bit about what happened there, what the outcome was, and whether that was okay or not?
Of course, we had the case some years ago with the Ten Commandments case out of Alabama, and the Supreme Court ruled that Alabama could not have the Ten Commandments in its judicial building, even though we can have a statue to the Greek god of justice right outside the federal building, built at federal expense, and that seems to be okay. Now, in other cases, though, the Supreme Court has said that sometimes the Ten Commandments may be displayed. In fact, in the Perry case out of Texas, Van Orden versus Perry, by a 5-4 margin, the court upheld a Ten Commandments display there. Well, on the same day, by also a 5-4 margin, they struck down a Ten Commandments display in Kentucky. And the difference is whether it seems to be endorsing Christianity or not. My argument is, if you're going to say the Ten Commandments are endorsing religion, what religion are they endorsing? Moses was a Jew, and Muslims accept the Ten Commandments, and Christians, of course, accept them, as do those of many other religions, and they are simply the moral foundation on which our laws are built. And for that reason, I think we have every right and every duty to display them. One other point that I've made sometimes is that some years ago I did a computer search of Supreme Court cases, putting in the Ten Commandments, putting in each commandment individually, and didn't take account for all the different wordings and so on, so I'm sure I didn't get all the cases. But I found over 1,000 cases of record, that means either federal cases or state Supreme Court cases, in which the Ten Commandments has been cited by judges in official decisions. Now, if judges can cite the Ten Commandments in court decisions, why can't we display them in the courthouse or in the schoolhouse?
Well, do you think there's an effort to de-Christianize the United States, and why are we seeing it, and maybe what do we do to counteract that?
There certainly is an effort to de-Christianize the United States, and even beyond that, to remove all segment of religion from the public arena. We have an organization called the Freedom from Religion Foundation that really makes the ACLU look moderate by comparison, and they seem to be demanding that every mention of Christianity or any religious display at all in the public arena needs to be eliminated. In one case, they even objected to a cross that a private party had put beside a road where one of their loved ones had been killed. And anyway, that case was ultimately resolved without going to court, but the point of the matter is, yes, there is a drive to get Christianity and religion in general out of the public arena, and what we need to remember is that Christianity in particular, and religion in general, is the basis for our law. Our basic principles of law, like the respect for life, respect for property, respect for family, respect for truth, and respect for God himself, all come out of the Ten Commandments. And I say respect for God remember that in our Declaration of Independence, we say, and this is by Jefferson, we say that we are entitled to our independence by the laws of nature and of nature's God. And we say all men are not evolved but created equal, and that they are endowed not by their government with certain negotiable privileges, but by their creator with certain inalienable rights. And so clearly we are based upon a recognition of God, because God is the source of governmental authority, and God is the source of human rights.
Yeah, you just hit on something that you talked about in your talk a little bit about Darwin and his idea on evolution and the implications of that and its ties to National Socialism, Nazism, and Marxism. Could you expand a little bit about that? Why is this Darwinian hypothesis that we evolved from slime that turned into monkeys somehow, why is that so dangerous beyond just having an improper understanding of the world?
Because it's become far, far more than just a theory of origins. It's become a worldview. In fact, back in the later 1800s, Herbert Spencer in America took Darwin's ideas and decided to make those the basis for understanding all sorts of academic disciplines, history and anthropology, sociology, economics, and the like. Marx is simply the idea of a class struggle based on the evolutionary struggle. In fact, Marx even said that he wanted to donate the English version of Das Kapital to Darwin, because he says Darwin has given me a biological basis for the class struggle. And the idea that the classes are battling against each other, the nobility versus the peasantry, the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, and so on. Whereas you look to Nazism, which is not a right-wing ideology. Nazi means National Socialist, also based on Darwinianism. There, the class struggle is not class, it's race struggle, races struggling against each other. And Hitler says in Mein Kampf that the Aryan race has evolved into a master race, and that therefore it should have dominion over other races, that the Jewish race is a parasite that has attached itself to the master race and needs to be eradicated. Both of these are based on Darwin. The only difference is with Marxism, the struggle is between classes. With Nazism, it is between races or nations. But they're both based on that Darwinist, materialist worldview.
And so what is the solution to all these problems that confront our nation, that threaten our freedom, that threaten to undermine the foundations of our laws? What do we do about all this?
Here's a good example that, during the Korean War, we had a lot of Americans taken prisoner. A lot of them were subject to brainwashing by the North Koreans. Interestingly, the brainwashing they were doing was pretty much giving them what today we'd call the politically correct version of history and government, that America's an oppressor and so on. There were some that bought it, either in whole or in part, but there were some that didn't. And there was a psychologist who was with the Army at the time, later came to teach at Grove City College, and he said there were two types of American soldiers who the North Korean communists found could not be brainwashed. One of those was those with a strong Christian faith. The others was those with a good knowledge of American history. And those are the very things that the left is at war with today. We need to strengthen our Christian faith, and we need to strengthen our true knowledge of history, and likewise our Constitution and our Republican institutions.
Fantastic. Colonel, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Alex, and I wish you the best. I hope our paths cross again soon.